With bitter tears streaming down her face and shattered hopes staring at her, Janelle looked at the HIV self-test kit's results that lay on her bed. This was the 13th time she was doing the test, and all the 13 times had come out positive. How could I have been so careless? Janelle asked herself as more and more tears flowed down her cheeks. And as if that wasn't pain enough, the pregnancy kit results, that were just next to the HIV results, showed that she was pregnant. She felt her world crumbling beneath her legs, as regrets of her wrong decisions hammered her mercilessly. Inasmuch as the two results scared her, Janelle didn't want to die. She could wish for 1,000,000 stars and 1,000 galaxies just to be healthy again, but those were just empty wishes. How am I gonna break this news to my parents? She asked herself as she cried silently. She cursed the day she got her first smartphone, cursed the day she met Dominic, but all these curses amounted to nothing. Regretfully, she started remembering how it had all started. Janelle's troubles could be traced back to the day when, as an 18-year-old girl, she created her first social media account on Instagram. This was immediately after graduating high school, and his dad gifted her a smartphone for her stellar performances at school. She didn't know much about tech, and so naivety took the better part of her. After days of interacting with the platform, she was overwhelmed by all she saw, and soon enough, she had already set her mind to emulate some of the popular female socialites she saw on the platform. Janelle had reached this decision because in her, she felt she was more beautiful than some of the popular socialites, had a better body figure than most of them, and her height was the best for modeling. In her naivety, Janelle thought to herself of how she could make millions of money just by posting her seducing photos on the platform. However, Janelle's newfound dream of becoming a socialite had 3 obstacles to it. The first one, since she had just graduated from high school, she didn't have any money to buy the designer clothes, so she could start her journey. The second one, she didn't have any connections on where she could start, and finally the third one, and the biggest of them all, was that Janelle's parents were staunch Christians, and she had been brought up in a Christian way. In fact, Janelle was still a virgin, and the youth leader at her church. So, Janelle was dead sure that her parents couldn't approve the idea of her becoming a socialite. It was easier for her dad to drink all the water in the oceans than to allow her only daughter to sink into the world of fashion. Knowing these 3 things too well, Janelle spent the next few weeks trying to come up with the best solution to overcome her obstacles. So one night, after hours of scrolling through posts in Instagram, Janelle was about to sleep when she received a DM from a guy called Dominic. Taking a quick look at his profile picture, Janelle immediately fell in love with what he saw. Dominic was the most handsome man that Janelle had ever seen. He had cute dimples, pinkish lips, well-trimmed beards, and a light skin complexion. Going through his Instagram photos, Janelle came to the conclusion that Dominic was a very wealthy person. Replying to the message, Janelle found herself texting with the sweetest guy ever. Dominic did not hesitate to make his intentions known to Janelle. He told her that he was deeply in love with her, and if given the chance, he would like to marry her. He told Janelle that he owned several car companies, and so money wasn't an issue to him. Janelle, being the naive girl she was, forgot all about her manners, and she found herself entertaining the stranger by the name of Dominic. Of all the days that her conscience would fail her, it chose this day. At first, she tried to play hard to get, but Dominic's charm was too irresistible. The two texted for almost 2 hours, exchanged contacts, then bid each other good night. From that day onwards, Janelle and Dominic could hardly go for a couple of minutes without texting each other or calling. The two had not met face to face yet, but their conversations on the phone would make you think they had known each other for ages. Janelle even told Dominic about her plans of becoming a socialite and the obstacles she was facing. Dominic assured her of his support, and he even started sending her lots of money so she could buy the expensive dresses. In her heart, Janelle was profusely thanking God for linking her to the man of her dreams. She couldn't believe how lucky she was to land such a man like Dominic. Is God repaying me for being a good youth leader? Is it my parents' prayers being answered? Is it my lucky horoscope? All these questions kept ringing in her mind. On the other hand, Dominic never gave her mind a chance to doubt him. He was constantly gifting her, till Janelle's mind could think of nothing else but Dominic. However, with the constant gifting that was happening, one problem was arising. Janelle, who was still living with her parents, could no longer hide the many gifts that were coming her way. She was jobless, and a few months from joining university, but her parents started to notice a change in her lifestyle. Her dad, being the curious type, was the first to ask her where she was getting the money from to buy the expensive clothes and shoes, but Janelle couldn't answer. Taking her silence to mean a serious issue, Janelle's dad called his wife to the scene, and together, they tried to ask their daughter what was happening, but she couldn't answer. After all, am I not a grown-up? Janelle asked herself. After several failed attempts, Janelle's parents gave up, but they swore to revisit the matter soon. That night, Janelle texted Dominic and told him how her parents were nagging her with endless questions. Janelle told Dominic how she loathed her parents and how she wished she wasn't living with them. She told him how she yearned for freedom to do whatever she wanted in the world. And like a trapper who had been waiting for this moment all his life, Dominic quickly told her that he could solve her problems by marrying her. At first, Janelle didn't welcome the idea, but she later foolishly convinced herself that she was out of options, and so being married to a rich guy was the only option she got left. The two agreed that they would meet in town the following day in an expensive 5-star hotel. The meeting would serve as their first face-to-face meeting, and also the first day of marriage for Janelle. In order not to create suspicion, Janelle was not to carry anything with her, except her handbag and her national ID. Why Dominic insisted on her carrying her ID, Janelle couldn't tell. All she was excited about was to meet her rich, sweet lover. Early the next day, Janelle woke up in high spirits. Her dad wasn't at home, and so it was only her mom that was around. Janelle vaguely explained to her mom that she needed to go to town to pick some academic documents that were needed to apply for a course in the university. Janelle's mom, not being the educated type, did not argue with her daughter because she didn't know much about education stuffs. However, her motherly instincts told her that Janelle was lying to her. With a soft motherly voice, Janelle's mom told her daughter, "Daughter, something deep down tells me that you are lying to me, but it's okay if in you feel that I don't deserve the truth. You know I love you, but of late you've been acting weird. Please, daughter, am I such a terrible mother that you can't tell me what is really wrong with you? You are 18, but I want you to know that even if you were 100 years old, I would still be your mom, and you will always be my little girl. My daughter, something tells me you have found a man for yourself, but my advice to you is, in this life, learn to differentiate between things that can wait and those that can't. For now, you are too young to be focused on love. On the other hand, if an affair isn't the case, and you feel that you've made a terrible mistake in your life, please know you can always share it with me, without the fear of being judged. And no matter how dirty you feel, I want you to know that you can always come home to me. Daughter, the world is out to destroy you, please take care." The words of her mother made Janelle's eyes teary. Guilt was consuming her up, and she didn't want to turn her back on the one woman who had always cared about her. For a moment, she even considered canceling her plans with Dominic and stay at home. However, the thoughts of the lavish life they would live with Dominic made her discard all her mother's advice. Assuring her mom that all was well and that she would be back before lunchtime, Janelle headed to the bus stop and took a bus to town. On the way, because of the guilt eating her up, Janelle convinced herself that after getting married and becoming a successful and wealthy socialite, she would come back home and build her parents a nice house, and maybe that way, her parents would find a reason to forgive her. After all, such is the nature of bad decisions, we never lack an excuse to justify ourselves before making them. Finally, after a 3-hour drive, Janelle arrived in town, and no sooner had she alighted from the bus than Dominic picked her up in a Range Rover Sport. The two hugged each other for a moment, then headed to the said hotel. On the way, Janelle found out that Dominic was even more charming in real life than over the phone. One could even think that he had a doctorate degree in how best to treat a woman. In the 5 minutes they were in the car, Janelle's stupid heart had already committed itself to love Dominic with all it got. When they got to the hotel, Dominic ordered the most expensive drinks and foods for her. As they ate, Dominic kept Janelle engaged with stories of his life, all his businesses, his fleet of cars, his houses, his wealthy dad, and many more. He then explained to Janelle that since he had some unfinished mega business deal in town, the two would spend the night in the hotel's guest rooms, then proceed to his house the next day. At this point, Janelle and her innocent 18-year-old mind was agreeing to everything that Dominic said. In her, she even cursed the women that say men are trash, because how come they had never met such a sweet soul like Dominic? After the food, came the dances, and after the dances, came more drinks, until Janelle felt tipsy. Seeing her, one could not tell that that was her first time taking beer, and dancing around with a man. She was trying all she could to act like she wasn't a first-timer on matters merrymaking, just to impress Dominic, who she was now referring to as her husband. When they got tired, Dominic told Janelle that since his ID was been processed at the mega business deal, Janelle would have to book a room using her ID. Taking the money that Dominic gave her, and without thinking twice, Janelle did as she was told. The two checked themselves in the room, and they spent the afternoon chatting about all sorts of things. Up to this far, Dominic was still playing the nice guy, and his act was so professional that Janelle never had any doubts with him. Night came, and as a reward to Dominic, or so she convinced herself, Janelle gave away her virginity to him. She didn't care about using protection. After all, Dominic was her husband. After that, sleep took her away, and she didn't know how long she had slept when she was awoken by a hard knock on the door. Janelle opened her eyes, and she saw how the sun rays had illuminated the room, a clear indication that the sun was high up in the sky. She looked besides her, and Dominic was nowhere to be seen. She looked for him in the bathroom, but he wasn't there. Dressing up, she thought Dominic was the one knocking at the door, but upon opening it, she was met by an angry room service attendant who told her that her time was up, and she needed to vacate the room so the attendant could clean it up. Janelle asked her whether she had seen Dominic, but the attendant told her she knew no one by that name. However, she told Janelle that she had seen a guy of Janelle's description leaving the hotel very early in the morning, accompanied by another lady. Sensing that something wasn't right, Janelle asked the attendant to give her 30 more minutes so she could clean herself up, to which the attendant agreed. Janelle tried to call Dominic severally, but the call wasn't going through. At this point, her mind was racing, and she couldn't tell what was happening. 20 minutes later, she was about to leave the room when she noticed a $10 bill that had been placed on the bedside table. Picking it up, Janelle hurriedly left the room and headed for the bus stop. 5 minutes later, she was on her way back to her parents' home. She tried to figure out who the mysterious woman that Dominic had left with was, but she couldn't find an answer. She later concluded that maybe she was Dominic's wife, and Dominic was a love con all along. She felt stupid and used, and she regretted not heeding to her mom's advice, but she soon buried all those regrets together with Dominic behind her. When she got home, her dad wasn't home yet, and her mom was just pleased to see her back. Janelle never cared to explain where she had spent the night, and her mom didn't care to ask. She was just happy that her daughter was home and sound. From that point onwards, Janelle was back to her old ways of being a good girl and a devoted church member. Her parents were happy to see that their daughter was back to her former glory, and they couldn't stop praising her and telling her stories of how worried she had made them a few weeks ago. Days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to a month and another. By now, Janelle had forgotten all about Dominic, and she was now more than focused with her life. She had even given up on her ambitions of becoming a socialite. Dominic never cared to reach out to her, but that didn't bother her at all. In 1 month's time, Janelle was to join university and study journalism. However, 2 weeks before she could report to uni, Janelle started experiencing weird symptoms, which brought back the memories of that night at the hotel with Dominic. By now, she had not received her monthly periods for the last 2 months. At first, it wasn't a major concern to her because, being the kind that gets irregular periods, she had been used to missing her periods for weeks. In fact, a few years ago, her parents had even tried to take her to the hospital, but the gynecologist had told them that Janelle had an irreversible rare body condition that was affecting her normal menstrual periods. However, this time round, Janelle felt every symptoms of a pregnant woman. Her first cause of alarm was her increased morning sickness, which she was trying to hide from her parents. Not wanting to take chances, Janelle decided to visit a local chemist to buy a pregnancy test kit. And while at it, Janelle decided to buy the HIV self-test kit, just to know her health status. When she came home, Janelle was too afraid to take the tests, and she kept postponing the exercise, just to see if the symptoms would go away, but they didn't. As she looked at the results, no amount of regrets or crying could change what was before her. She couldn't believe that her first time into the world of pleasures had left her with an ugly, indelible mark. Why did my first time have to be this detrimental? Oh God, did it have to be this way? What is 1 hour of pleasure compared to this burden that I will have to carry for the rest of my life? She asked herself. I'm gonna tell my parents about it, and if they chase me away from home, I will have earned it. She said to herself as she slowly walked to the sitting room to meet her parents, who were busy laughing watching a Mr. Bean movie.